We're handing all 80 billion to Henry, my father declared across the mahogany boardroom table. Now leave. You're officially exiled from this family and this company. I stared at them, completely unbothered. For 10 years, I lived in grease-stained lab coats while my golden boy brother partied in Monaco and claimed credit for my work. My mother laughed coldly. Did you really think a woman belonged at the helm of an empire, Evelyn? Pack your things. So, I asked calmly, you finalized an $80 billion acquisition without checking the intellectual property registry? Mom chuckled, waving dismissively. We sold our business, darling. You're just an employee. That's when the lead buyer, the tech titan who just signed the wire transfer, closed his portfolio, stood up and looked directly at my arrogant father. Actually, he said, his voice cutting through the room like a razor, she doesn't work for you. You work on her licenses. My name is Evelyn Vance. I'm 28 years old, and for the last 10 years, I was the ghost in the machine of Vance Dynamics. While the tech world believed our groundbreaking neural kinetics robotics was born in a sleek corner office, the reality was far dirtier. It was born in the basement R&D lab, under humming fluorescent lights, where I lived on cold black coffee and grease-stained lab coats. I wrote every single line of the adaptive control firmware. I soldered the delicate microactuators with trembling fingers at 4 in the morning. I was the brain, the spine, and the pulse of that company. Then there was my 25-year-old brother, Henry. Henry didn't know the difference between a brushless motor and a microcontroller. What he did know was how to wear an $8,000 tailored suit, flash a practice smile for the tech blogs, and charm venture capitalists over $500 dinners in Manhattan. To our parents, Richard and Eleanor, Henry was the destined heir, the charismatic visionary who looked the part of a billionaire CEO. To them, I was just an unmarketable technician. A daughter whose place was behind the scenes, keeping her head down and fixing what was broken without ever asking for credit. A woman in a boardroom makes investors nervous, Evelyn. My father told me flatly when I asked for a seat on the executive committee 3 years ago. Henry has the presence. You have the technical skills. Stay where you're useful. My mother agreed, gently brushing a smudge of circuit grease from my cheek, as if it were a disease. Be grateful we give you a playground for your toys, darling. Henry will take care of the family name. I didn't argue. I didn't shout or throw tantrums. I simply smiled, went back downstairs to my workbench, and made a quiet, calculated decision. When the breakthrough prototype for our autonomous Neuralink drive was finalized, I didn't register the intellectual property under Vance Dynamics. Instead, using my own personal savings, I formed an independent holding entity named Vance Kinetic Systems and filed every core patent under my own name. My family thought I was just an obedient employee. They had no idea I was the sole owner of the foundation their entire empire was built on. The announcement came, without warning, on a Tuesday afternoon. Apex Global, the multi-trillion-dollar multinational tech conglomerate, had officially extended an unprecedented acquisition buyout of $80 billion for Vance Dynamics. It was the largest robotics acquisition in corporate history. My parents called a mandatory, all-hands executive meeting on the penthouse floor of the headquarters. When I walked into the grand conference room, still wearing my faded denim jacket and carrying a folder of the latest thermal stress test results, I immediately noticed 2 things. Every executive wore a celebratory smirk, and 2 armed private security guards were stationed right beside the double doors. My father, Richard, stood at the head of the long mahogany table, holding a crystal glass of scotch. Today marks the pinnacle of the Vance family legacy, he boomed, gesturing grandly toward Henry, who was lounging casually in an ergonomic leather chair, checking his gold Rolex. We have finalized the sale of Vance Dynamics to Apex Global for $80 billion. And as the rightful architect of our public brand, Henry will receive the entirety of the family equity trust. Every single dollar. A polite round of applause rippled through the room. I stood by the wall, waiting for the other shoe to drop. My mother, Eleanor, stepped forward, her voice dripping with cold, patronizing pity. As for you, Evelyn, your employment with Vance Dynamics is terminated effective immediately. Henry feels your presence will create an awkward shadow during the corporate transition. You're officially exiled from the company and the family estate. You're cutting me out entirely? I asked, keeping my voice utterly level. After 10 years of building the core technology from scratch. You are paid a salary, Evelyn. My father sneered, tossing a small cardboard box onto the table. You're a background labor. You don't get a cut of the empire. Pack your desk. Security will escort you off the premises. I looked at Henry, who offered a smug, victorious wink. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I quietly took off my company lanyard, dropped the silver access badge onto the table, and looked my father dead in the eye. Enjoy the sale, Dad, I whispered. Then I turned on my heel and walked out the glass doors. I spent the next 48 hours in the quiet comfort of my downtown loft, drinking chamomile tea and enjoying the first uninterrupted sleep I'd had in 10 years. I didn't turn on the television. I didn't look at the business news. I simply waited for the inevitable collapse of their house of cards. On Thursday morning, the earthquake struck. Apex Global's lead technical integration team arrived at Advanced Dynamics R&D facility to initiate the migration of the proprietary neural kinetics architecture. But when their senior engineers plugged into the main server bank, they didn't find open-source access. They hit an impenetrable, military-grade biometric encryption wall. When Apex demanded the master decryption keys, my father confidently ordered Henry to unlock the system. Henry, sweating through his tailored shirt, clicked through error screen after error screen, utterly clueless about what an API handshake even meant. That was when Apex Global brought in their corporate audit and intellectual property attorneys. Within 2 hours, Apex's legal team pulled the public patent registry and uncovered the brutal, undeniable truth. Advanced Dynamics owned the physical chassis, the assembly plant leases, and the branded trademarks. But the entire adaptive AI core, the patent for the Neuralink drive, and every line of operating firmware belonged exclusively to an independent entity, Vance Kinetic Systems LLC. Sole owner, Evelyn Vance. The reaction was swift and merciless. Apex Global immediately initiated an emergency freeze on the $80 billion escrow account. Their chief counsel issued a formal demand notice to my parents for material breach of contract, securities fraud, and misrepresentation of fundamental company assets. If Vance Dynamics couldn't deliver the intellectual property within 72 hours, Apex would not only cancel the buyout, but sue the Vance family for $5 billion in damages. At 1:15 p.m., my phone lit up. It didn't stop. 40 missed calls from my father. 28 panicked voicemails from my mother, and a desperate, unhinged text from Henry that read, "Evelyn, pick up right now. What the hell did you do to the servers? You're ruining our lives." I looked at the buzzing screen, took a calm sip of my tea, and let it ring. The emergency summit was convened at Apex Global's glass tower in the financial district. When my family arrived, they were a complete wreck. My father's tie was crooked, my mother was clutching a handkerchief with trembling hands, and Henry looked like he hadn't slept in 2 days. They expected me to enter looking guilty, waiting to be pressured into a family-first surrender. Instead, the boardroom doors swung open, and I walked in wearing a sharp navy power suit, accompanied by 4 senior intellectual property partners from the city's most ruthless corporate law firm. I didn't take a seat on the Vance family side of the table. I walked directly across the room and sat right beside Marcus Sterling, the CEO of Apex Global. "Evelyn, thank God you're here," my father stammered, attempting to put on a stern parental tone. "Tell these gentlemen this was all an administrative error. Sign over the patent assignments right now so we can finalize the acquisition. We can discuss your compensation as a family later." "There is no error, Dad," I replied, my voice steady and completely calm. My lead attorney opened a black leather binder and slid a stack of legal documents across the polished table. For the past 7 years, Vance Dynamics has manufactured automated hardware using proprietary Neuralink firmware wholly owned by Vance Kinetic Systems. Not only is my client the exclusive patent holder, but Vance Dynamics currently owes her company over $300 million in unpaid back-licensing royalties. My mother turned pale as a ghost. Henry slammed his hands on the table. "You can't do this. You're our sister. You stole our company's future. Marcus Sterling turned slowly toward Henry, his gaze turning to ice. Your sister didn't steal anything, Mr. Vance. She built the technology. You merely wore the suits. Marcus then pushed a brand new contract toward me. Apex Global is terminating the acquisition of Vance Dynamics effective immediately. Instead, we are entering into a direct, exclusive licensing partnership with Vance Kinetic Systems for $80 billion. I picked up the fountain pen, signed my name on the dotted line, and looked at my father. The empire is sold, Dad. Just not to you. The fallout was swift, absolute, and utterly unforgiving. Without the rights to my patents, Vance Dynamics became an empty shell overnight. Left with millions of dollars in factory leases, back licensing penalties, and zero viable software, my parents were forced into emergency corporate liquidation. The sprawling family estate in the Hamptons and their luxury vehicles were seized to cover mounting legal liabilities. Henry, stripped of his unearned title and the illusion of brilliance, quickly found that no prestigious tech firm had any interest in hiring a figurehead who couldn't write a single line of functional code. Meanwhile, my life transformed on my own terms. Backed by the full weight of the $80 billion partnership with Apex Global, I established Aegis Robotics, a cutting-edge aerospace and autonomous systems company. I became the sole founder and chief executive officer, retaining full intellectual ownership over every blueprint, prototype, and algorithm we produced. Within 12 months, our state-of-the-art research facility employed over 500 brilliant engineers, women and men whose work was valued, credited, and properly compensated. About a year after the dust settled, I ran into Henry outside a coffee shop near my new corporate headquarters. He looked tired. The expensive designer suit was gone, replaced by an off-the-rack jacket, holding a folder of junior sales resumes. When our eyes met, he stopped in his tracks, looking like he wanted to apologize, or perhaps demand a favor. I didn't stop to give him the chance. I gave him a calm, polite nod, stepped into the back of my car, and closed the door. Sometimes, people ask me if I was too ruthless with my own blood, if I should have handed over the keys to save my family's pride. My answer is always the same. Family doesn't exploit your labor in the dark just to exile you in the light. True power has never been about inherited titles, polished suits, or arrogant boardroom speeches. True power belongs to the person who actually knows how to build the machine. And for the first time in my life, the machine was entirely mine.